Now, while we're talking about musical forms, I should mention two other concepts for you here. First, the idea of a strophic form, and that is a type of music that is composed with repeated musical sections. It can be verse after verse after verse. It can be verse-chorus kind of alternation, which is very common in today's contemporary music. And I have an example here just to clarify this in your minds. I chose this particular example from Nathan Aveao for a couple reasons. First of all, because it shows you the strophic idea within the context of Hawaiian music. And secondly, I just love his voice. It is beautiful, especially in that falsetto register, the higher register. So you have this verse section. I can't remember all the words, but it starts out like that. And then the chorus. And my falsetto is not nearly as strong and as beautiful as his, but forgive me for that little demo. So you have those two sections that alternate, and even though the words will change on the verses, you get something repeated, something in a pattern for the human mind to kind of follow along. That's a strophic form, and it's very common. I would have to say that 99.9% of all popular music that I'm aware of in the last century uses some form of strophic organization. Now, contrast that to through composed, which is much less common, especially in contemporary times, than maybe certain traditional cultures that will use this. No repeated sections or phrases. There are some European art songs that are through composed. They don't. They just move from section to section, and nothing repeats in terms of a musical idea. But in the Hawaiian context, there are many mele oli types of chants that are through composed. There may be certain chants by African griots from the traditional African cultures that are through composed, no repeated sections. But most contemporary music has some kind of organization of verses and choruses, sections called bridges, things like that. Now here's an example of a through composed composition.
O que eu uli vela nu, o que eu uli lole kalani, o que eu ikuka iakakalai, o malam malam maik malam.
Among human cultures, the search for one's origin is universal. Hawaiians have recorded the story of their own birth in an epic creation chant called the Kumulipo. It is an oli consisting of more than 2,000 lines telling of the rise of the first Hawaiian from a bleak cosmic night. More significantly, the text is part of a body of work emanating from a tradition that is essentially oral. Not only was genealogy preserved and transmitted in this manner down through the generations, but so were Hawaiian history, culture, tradition, and all knowledge. Learning was something that was accomplished over time, not by reading books or taking tests, but through relationships with the environment, elders, through patient observation, reflection, and practice. Native Hawaiian children traditionally practiced patience, honesty, and respect, and being pono. Pono is an overarching belief system that defines the right way to live. Being pono is the basic value in our culture from which other values grow, including those of learning and education. Not only could you not learn without being pono, but learning was pono. The history of modern Hawaii from the time of Captain Cook and the missionaries is a history of how this culture, with its unique values and mores, has been misunderstood by the West. It is a misunderstanding of tragic proportion that has unfortunately included misguided attempts at educating generations of modern Native Hawaiian students.
So that's actually a repeat of an earlier clip where I was showing you that idea of the central tone and the logogenic style. But we can also use that same clip to show the through composed. There weren't any musical phrases that were repeated with the same intervals and the same rhythms. Every new phrase was different from the previous phrase. That's through composed. Now, one more bullet in the slide just reminds us that most music we know today is strophic. Popular songs in all different genres, hymns, etc. Now I want to leave you with a short verbal summary of what we've gone over in this presentation. We've gone over that mele hula, that style of chanting that's meant to be decorated or enhanced or accompanied by dance, is both a dance style and a musical style, that we have categories within mele hula. The hula kahiko, the whole full name would be mele hula kahiko, old style or ancient tradition of chanting with little or no influence of the Western culture, accompanied by traditional instruments. And the hula awana, the more modern style, a blending of old and new, a blending of Hawaiian elements and Western elements, singing Western-style melodies, major scale melodies, accompanied by quarterphones. We talked about the fact there was a style that maybe kind of sits in between those two in a sense, the hula kui, and that was the ancient style of chanting. The voice is used in the ancient style with those kinds of ornamentations. And instead of doing 2 or 3 tones, they can do more tones and using the intervals of the Western scale or the Western triad chord. We talked about Polynesian practices concerning singing and dancing. We talked about the fact in Hawaii, traditionally the roles of dancing and chanting were separated. We looked at a number of representative traditional Hawaiian instruments from the idiophone category, membranophone category, and aerophone category. You might have noticed in going through that discussion there weren't any traditional chordophones. And then we went over important concepts in Hawaiian music and dance, the idea of mana, or power, and kauna, or hidden or indirect meaning. We discussed more broadly some important concepts for vocal music as logogenic or melogenic, and we talked about form or musical architecture, if you will, in our last slide here, strophic form or through composed form. Aloha.